Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Headed into our final segment of the day. Going to be talking some updates on the Stefon Diggs deal. For those of you who didn't happen to catch any of it through the week, Stefon Diggs, the star receiver for the Buffalo Bills, was traded to the Houston Texans earlier this week on Wednesday. The Texans traded a 2025 second-round pick that is initially from the Minnesota Vikings in exchange for Diggs and a 2024 sixth-rounder and a 2025 fifth-rounder. So that is obviously sort of the baseline of this. Texans trying to capitalize on the fact that they have so many key players for their organization on rookie contracts and they have the extra space. We've talked in length this week about the spending that they've been able to do outside of the lines during free agency, adding a bunch to their defense, adding Joe Mixon as a potential, in my opinion, an upgrade in the run game from last year as well. But had some interesting details come out over the past 24 hours. The Texans are going to be voiding the final 3 years of Diggs' contract. They took some guaranteed money that was supposed to be down the road, somewhere around $3 million, and added it to his contract for this season. So this becomes an expiring deal for Diggs, who is probably looking to cash out on one last big-time payday. He was under contract for the next few years, of course, and was going to be getting money, but a lot less of it guaranteed. And now he has a chance to really establish himself again after, to some degree, a down season last year where he had his least amount of yards since 2019 and was just not the same level of effective as we've seen from him in the past. But Diggs is currently 30 years old, and he's going to, again, probably try and chase that one last big-time contract. Now, as far as where I think he's going to end up, not going to dive into all that too much just yet. We still have a full season to play with him. I don't think he's going to be back with Houston after this year. I feel like they're probably going to want to have that cap availability in the next 3 years or so when they do have to pay the likes of CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. Nico Collins is also entering the final year of his contract. Diggs is, should be still the better player than Nico Collins, but Collins has the longer term upside. So again, we'll see how all of that works out. But again, this is Diggs getting a chance to sort of play hungrier, which I feel like can be a little bit debated as to what that means, because Diggs is somebody who was very unhappy with the way that the Bills used him this past year. As we know, with wide receivers, oftentimes it's a very, statistic heavy position, which I don't think is always fair necessarily in terms of the base stats. I would just prefer to see, Diggs be bought into an organization and the process of all of it, where the Bills offense probably to some degree was even better last year down the stretch when they weren't trying to force feed him every time. But I mean, the tension between him and the Bills went back to at least last offseason, coming out of their divisional loss against the Bengals. And that was sort of, reestablished by the fact that they are going to pay, the Bills that is, are going to pay $31 million in dead money, which is the largest hit for a non-quarterback in history in terms of dead cap. So really does tell you how badly they wanted to move on from him. I guess it is being reported that Diggs was allowed to seek a trade partner to sort of make this type of deal work. So seems like Diggs was also in on that note, on the whole idea of him getting a shorter term contract from the Texans, wiping out those final years, and he seems to be, wanting to be on this expiring deal. Again, I do feel like the level of buy-in from an organizational standpoint is going to be a big time subplot with the Texans this season, because I definitely don't want to, trash him necessarily. He has diva tendencies, you can say that. I don't want to categorize him necessarily as a diva, his personality wise, because I've never met the man and that would be a little bit unfair to do so. But we hasn't had the cleanest of endings in his past 2 stops. Now, the Minnesota deal wasn't all that big of a situation at the time, but we just know the type of player that Diggs is. He's very passionate, of course, and he has the utmost confidence in himself, which he should for good reason. But is he going to be able to sort of hone that into a Texans team that is trying to capitalize on a window here, just as the Bills were when Diggs first arrived in Buffalo, and they were trying to sort of do a similar situation where they had a quarterback that was, consensus top 5 guy in the league, or at least perceived to be that way at the time, with Josh Allen, and they were trying to maximize on that window where he was on a rookie contract. And now that's what the Texans are attempting to do with CJ Stroud, which is definitely the right decision in my eyes, because it seems like they are close enough that, they can be real competitors in the playoffs. Am I going to pick them over the Chiefs? No, I'm not, pretty definitively, but who knows also. I think that there's no reason to not try at this point, and the Texans are doing so, and it's absolutely the right decision. How is Diggs going to respond to, being in an offense that has, I would argue, way more talent than the Bills' skill positions last year did, where it was Diggs, it was Gabe Davis, who was dealing with some injuries. Khalil Shakir was a nice development over the course of the year. I don't know. I mean, the Bills actually, as I'm talking through this in real time, the Bills were a good offense last year as well, so I don't totally want to discredit them. But lots of weapons here in Houston with Nico Collins, who it seems like Stroud has an excellent rapport with. If you look red zone targets and on third down attempts, it seemed like he was always finding Nico Collins, and it was always succeeding. So in a good way, of course, but him, Tank Dell, who showed a lot of flashes in his rookie season, Dalton Schultz was a nice addition as well, and now they're bringing in Joe Mixon to try and help with the run game. I believe Dameon Pierce is still on the roster as well. Not that I expect him to be a massive contributor this season, but also somebody who had a tremendous rookie season and just disappeared last year, so with a better offensive line and passing game. Still something that makes no sense to me up to this point, but we'll see. But lots of mouths to feed in that situation. Nico Collins, again, also going to be on the final year of his current contract. Maybe the Texans work out something with him for an extension wise, but this is a big time inflection point for Diggs to sort of prove himself. What do you want to be in the NFL as things currently stand? Do you want to just be a high paid player, or do you want to be a real difference maker on a playoff team? And I do believe that Diggs has legitimate competitive fire. As corny as it sort of got, he started this whole trend, basically, of when he stood on the field watching the Kansas City Chiefs AFC Championship celebration and standing in the confetti and the trophy ceremony and all of that. Almost turned into this ridiculous trend that happened a little bit. But, it was because at the time he legitimately was hungry. He wanted to experience that, so he never felt it again. And unfortunately with the Bills, it just never played out again in a positive way necessarily from that point on. But I do think that Diggs really genuinely cares about trying to put together the best possible season, and not just for himself, but to actually have some postseason success. And we will see how that all plays out. I do also want to sort of go back to that idea of the fact that the Bills allowed Diggs to seek a trade partner. It was also reported that the one team that he was not allowed to talk to was the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that there may have been some level of communication from the two parties, and the Bills shut that down for good reason to not give Diggs to the Chiefs, because that would have been, I mean, there was just no way that was going to happen. I know that the Bills don't necessarily seem like favorites like they once were to win the Super Bowl, but they still believe that with Josh Allen and with the infrastructure they have, they can be at least playoff competitive, be searching for a division title. And what, I forget what I was watching. I think it was something on ESPN calling, somebody got made fun of for saying that the AFC East is open. I sort of do feel that it is, where I think that the Bills got worse. I think that the Dolphins got worse and the Jets got better. And those three teams, any one of them can come away with the division title. Let us know in the comment section who you have winning that division. But I feel like there's still, a lot up in the air with that division. And the Bills, they were just never going to trade Diggs to the Chiefs in that instance, where it feels like it would have been, I wouldn't say a death sentence necessarily, because again, we'll see how long Diggs is still going to have the level of play that he has showed that he clearly can, as recent as a couple seasons ago in 2022, where he had 1,400 yards. So I definitely would not say that he's washed, but something needed to change there in Buffalo. He heads out. The Bills save some money ultimately in the long run. Not ideal eating all of that dead money this coming season, but sometimes that's just the cost of, we just saw Russell Wilson and the amount of money that the Broncos are going to be paying him to not be there in these next two seasons. So sometimes you just need to, pay the price to make the change happen. And who knows? They obviously don't get a first round pick, but I don't think that any team was going to give up a first round pick for Diggs. And that second rounder could be semi-valuable next year. We will see. Like I talked about this past week, they are going to need to capitalize on some of these draft opportunities to actually, pull themselves back into a competitive environment headed forward here. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have on that. We do have a comment before we head out here from Kirito MVP. Warriors new five with Curry, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, Trace Jackson Davis are 10th offensively and 3rd defensively in the Warriors' old core, with Curry, Pajemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Green are 7th offensively, 15th defensively. What five will Steve Kerr keep? That's a good question. We saw last night the fact that Klay Thompson can still absolutely be a contributor. Let me pull up the numbers right now, but he had a very efficient night last night. And really, since he's sort of settled into this bench role, it seems like more and more often we're seeing him be able to give good offensive minutes. But that being said, the defense just is not at the level that it was when he was, the All-NBA caliber player. I actually don't know if he was ever selected to an All-NBA team, but of course we all know how good and valuable Klay was during those years, which is why he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He didn't make an All-NBA, which I guess isn't all too shocking necessarily, but he did make a third team once. 2 times, actually. So, yeah, I think that ultimately, I don't think Klay is going to be in the starting 5 for them. And Kirito comments, if Kuminga doesn't want to come off the bench, truthfully, I don't think he should come off the bench, and I don't think that he would take to that kindly. If your plan is to have Kuminga come off the bench, I feel like you're better off trading him and trying to make one of those deals. I think that he has too much value to make just a bench scorer. The raw talent even headed back to when he was coming into the G League Ignite. He was seen as a raw prospect that had plenty of talent, and now he's showing that this season. The whole league has seen that. Moving him back to the bench, I don't think that he would take it lightly, and he would probably, like he called out Kerr to the media earlier this year, he would do the same thing, and I think that that would be a mess. So in terms of Kuminga specifically, I feel like he's got to be your starter or you got to move him. And, Wiggins has been playing some real good minutes for them lately. His efficiency on offense, specifically from the three-point line, has seen an increase since the beginning of March, and we're seeing him be bought back in on defense more and more as time comes here. Ultimately, it's hard to sort of balance this two timelines situation that the Warriors have been walking that line of these past couple years, where they've been trying to, develop the youth talent while also being championship competitive. And ultimately, you look, they win the 2022 finals, but they did so in large part with that second timeline really taking a back seat. James Wiseman never saw the court for them. Kuminga rarely got minutes during that finals run, and same with Moody as well. Warriors owner loved Kuminga, but even said Trayce Jackson-Davis is what they really needed. So I do like Trayce Jackson-Davis a lot. He was a massive pickup for them, but you let me know, do you see him being, a dominant big man in the Western Conference in these final years of Curry's prime? Because I don't necessarily, and I really like him as a player, and he's a key contributor. He should be on the team, but I think you're going to need more size in the West as things currently stand than just banking on Trayce Jackson-Davis than you currently have. I feel like, again, the name that I really like sort of playing the experiment with is if they could add a Jarrett Allen to the team, just a real defensive anchor. Draymond, for as good of a defender as he is, it's kind of hard to rely on him consistently at this point in his career. And just having an anchor like that, can be a massive deal for them. Now, Jackson Davis, it's tough because he can definitely start on a handful of lineups right now in the NBA, but I don't see him, as things currently stand, as a starter on a finals winning team. So I feel like banking your whole future on that is a little bit of a risky move. Again, if this was on a different situation where you didn't have the likes of Steph Curry playing the level of basketball that he currently is, I would definitely be more prone to sort of playing it out and seeing how things work out. But I do think that they're a little bit on a time crunch here. They have to be definitive with choosing the direction they want to go with. Are they developing talent long term, or are they competing now? Truthfully, they can do either option depending on how they want to pivot here, because they have enough players on both ends of that spectrum that can do something in that role. With Podziemski and Kuminga, and Moody's been getting some more minutes lately. I've been a Moody guy all this time, and now we're finally seeing him get some more minutes as well. I know that, he wasn't even mentioned in your top 5 there, but playing some nice bench minutes, giving some good defensive pressure. I feel like if he is allowed to have a little bit of a longer leash, he still can succeed in the league here. But again, that's the thing, is it's hard to sort of roll out these guys for heavy minutes when they're young and making mistakes if you're trying to be a championship competitive team. The Warriors are one of the most expensive payrolls in the entire league right now, and they're sitting as the 10 seed and are going to have to win multiple play-in games to even make the playoffs. That's not good enough when you're in that luxury tax threshold and you're not having the regular season success to, and if they come out of the play-in tournament and make a finals run, which I will confidently say that they don't, then I'm wrong in this situation. I just don't see that being the case, and they're going to have to make some definitive decisions to pick a direction in which they want to go. But that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back on Monday. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the Final 4 games on both the men's and women's side. We will be, of course, diving into all of that on Monday, so we will see you then. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. Nice.